بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How are you, my students? I hope that you're happy and healthy and ready for today's lesson, which is Unit 2, writing. But before we do that, let's revise what we previously took in the speaking part. Work in pairs, make a list of desserts and snacks that are popular and try to decide what makes them popular. For example, is it because of the texture? Is it because of the flavor, the aroma, the presentation, the ingredients? If you remember, you made a list, you with your friend, and discuss why is this food popular, or why do you even like it? Then we fill this chart. This is my own choosing, of course, my own opinion. My favorite dessert or snack, this is of course talking about dessert, is cheesecake. I put the ingredients. Is it bought or homemade? How to make it? And my new dessert is the creme brulee, and we completed the chart until the end. Then we chose what you think is the best new dessert or snack and say why you think it's the best. So jumping to today's lesson, the writing, the objectives to find the place for each meal, match each meal with its memorable characters, write the description of a memorable meal. So we're hanging on to the theme of food, eating, meals, cooking, and so on. So think of an unforgettable meal you had eaten. Of course, you remember a meal. It's unforgettable for you. So think of an unforgettable meal you have eaten. What was it? Was it delicious or not? The taste, was it good? Was it bad? Is it unforgettable because it's really good or it's really bad? So it can mean both. So think of an unforgettable meal you had eaten. What was it? What was the meal? Was it delicious or not? So here, exercise A. Why do you think a meal might be unforgettable? When you describe a meal as this word, unforgettable, why do we describe it like that? Is it because here could it be for a good or bad reasons? It can be both, actually. Maybe it's unforgettable because of good reasons or bad reasons. Maybe it's because of the taste. Maybe because of the occasion. Maybe there's an unforgettable meal. Maybe it's just a regular meal, but the occasion itself made it unforgettable. Or maybe the taste, maybe the price of the meal at the restaurant, and so on. So there are many reasons why this meal is unforgettable. Read the text and find out why was each meal memorable. So we'll be reading about memorable meals. Where was each meal served? So they were served in different places. What were the writer's feelings in each case? So we'll be discussing the writer's feeling. Highlight the parts in the text that convey feelings or attitude. Number 2, would you have felt differently? How would you have reacted in each case? So we have many questions about stories about memorable meals. So looking at these pictures, where can you see photos like these? What kind of food is this? Are they sweets? No. Yes, very good. They are seafood, of course. Where can you see photos like these? Do you find the photo appetizing? Why or why not? Do you find these photos appetizing? Do you make you crave for seafood? Why or why not? Of course, if you like seafood, you'll say yes. I find these pictures appetizing. If you don't like seafood, you would say no, of course. So continuing here, too much seafood. So this is the first story here, the first memorable meal. So let's listen and understand the text. Too much seafood. Let's listen.
Too much seafood. A few years ago, we were at a famous seafood restaurant. A friend of ours went overboard and proceeded to order almost everything on the menu. Soon, immense amounts of seafood started arriving on large platters. We ended up with a feast that could have fed 20 starving people, not 6. It was all delicious, but there was too much of it. 3 of the group were determined to clear everything, so they continued gobbling down fish, seafood, salad, French fries, anything that was still on the table. 3 hours later, we split an exorbitant check among us and walked back to our hotel, feeling unpleasantly full. As expected, we all got sick. Our extravagant friend, who had eaten most of what he had ordered, was taken to the hospital. The rest of us were given strict orders to only consume liquids and stay in bed for the rest of our stay.
So, to summarize the story here, someone with his friends, it looks like they were in an Asian restaurant in Asia. They, as he said, one of our friends went overboard, so went to the extreme, went overboard, and proceeded to order almost everything on the menu. So they order a lot of food. Soon, immense amounts, really huge amounts of seafood started arriving on large platters and large plates, as you can see here in the picture. We ended up with a feast, a really large meal that could have fed 20 starving people, could have fed 20, and they were only 6, so there's too much seafood here. So when they ate too much seafood, they got a stomach ache and they became sick. And of course, the person who ate a lot of them, the most one who ate the seafood, ended up in the hospital. And of course, the food was it cheap or expensive? Yes, of course, it was really expensive. So this is the first, let's say, memorable meal for these men. Continuing with the other story here, pepper sauce and truffle. Pepper sauce and truffle. And from the picture, you can guess the place of this story is, yes, it's at a plane, inside a plane. So let's hear the story, then we will discuss it after.
Pepper sauce and truffle. I was flying back home from France. I had been given a first-class seat because the plane was overbooked and my seat had been given to someone else. I did not, of course, mind the change one bit. I had been traveling on a very tight student budget, and had been trying to cut down on expenses, so I tended to skip meals quite often. After the plane took off, I realized that I was famished. Appetizing smells wafting my way from the galley did nothing to reduce my hunger. Fortunately, we were served very soon. I tasted the food and was truly amazed. It consisted of the most succulent, tastiest bonfilet in pepper sauce that I had ever had. It was served with truffles and baked baby potatoes with herbs. The pepper sauce was delicious, as were the truffles. I decided that I rather liked flying first class.
So, to summarize the story, someone who ended up in a first-class seat, because he didn't, of course, go buy a first-class ticket, but he ended up in a first-class seat. He was really hungry. Here he said, appetizing smells wafting my way from the galley did nothing to reduce my hunger. He was really hungry, and he couldn't afford to buy food. Fortunately, for his luck, we were served very soon. I tasted the food and was truly amazed. So, here's the first described to the memorable food here, description. It consisted of the most succulent, tastiest bonfilet in pepper sauce that I had ever had. It was served with truffles and baked baby potatoes with herbs. So he really enjoyed his flight because of the food. At the end, he said, I decided that I rather liked flying first class. So why was each meal memorable? From the stories, each meal, the seafood meal and the truffle meal, why was it memorable for each of them? Yes, from the events of the stories, of course. The meal at the seafood restaurant was memorable because there was too much food, too much food, and everyone got sick. That's why they will always remember this meal, because there was too much food. They ordered too much seafood, and at the end, everyone got sick. Even one of them went to hospital. The meal on the plane was memorable because it was the tastiest and the best meal the person had ever had. Because, of course, this is a good story for him and a bad story for this people. The plane was memorable again because it was the tastiest, it was very delicious, and the best meal he had ever had. Where was each meal served? Where was each meal served? I think this is an easy one here. The seafood meal was served at a famous restaurant. They were at a restaurant. The bon filet dish was served on the plane, on the first class part of the plane, of course. What were the writer's feeling in each case? Highlight parts in the text that convey feelings and attitudes. So the writer's feelings in each case, the seafood case and the plane case. So, yes, we can say the writer felt in the first case that the meal was over the top, too extravagant, too diverse, and too expensive. So because they ordered a lot, of course. The writer of the second article was extremely satisfied with his meal. So the second part here, highlight parts in the text that convey feelings or attitudes, to convey feelings or attitudes here. So can you underline them here? So let's begin together. The first one, went overboard. One of them went overboard and ordered, yes, everything on the menu, almost everything on the menu. So he went to the extreme, overboard, to order everything on the menu. This is his attitude here. He bought everything. Also, we ended up with a feast that could have fed 20 starving people, not 6. So this is the second one here also. Also here he describing it as delicious. Delicious. It was all delicious. Everything. And we continued gobbling down. We continued gobbling down, swallowing the seafood. Fish, seafood, salad, French fries, anything was still on the table. We split an exorbitant check. Exorbitant check. Was it cheap or expensive? How he feels? Yes, it was really expensive for them. What about the second story? Can you give me some feelings, some attitudes here? So let's begin here. He said appetizing smells. He's really happy. He's starting to smell really appetizing smells wafting my way from the galley. And also he was truly amazed once he tasted the food. He said, I tasted the food and was truly amazed. This is his feeling. He was truly amazed. Also, it consisted of the most succulent, it's really delicious, succulent, tastiest bon filet in pepper sauce. So he's really enjoying his food because it was succulent. It was really tasty. And of course, he said that it was really delicious. The pepper sauce was delicious. So these are some of the attitudes and the feelings that each writer had felt. Would you have felt differently? How would you have reacted in each case? Would you have felt differently? I don't think so. If I was in the first story, I would be maybe irritated because I went to the hospital. If I was the second story, I would be really happy, just like the writer here. And here, how would you have reacted in each case? Of course, you can answer with your own, but for me, I don't think that I would change anything. I wouldn't order too much seafood. Any food, don't order too much. Continuing here, number 3, read through the text and find the words or phrases. Can you think of another word or phrases that you could use instead? Look them up in your dictionary and compare in class. So these words we heard, of course, from the text: immense, feast, gobble down, exorbitant, extravagant, skip a meal, waft, succulent, famished, and appetizing. So each one we will give a definition for. And of course, you can know this from the context. So let's listen again, and then we'll answer the question.
Too much seafood. A few years ago, we were at a famous seafood restaurant. A friend of ours went overboard and proceeded to order almost everything on the menu. Soon, immense amounts of seafood started arriving on large platters. We ended up with a feast that could have fed 20 starving people, not 6. It was all delicious, but there was too much of it. 3 of the group were determined to clear everything, so they continued gobbling down fish, seafood, salad, French fries, anything that was still on the table. 3 hours later, we split an exorbitant check among us and walked back to our hotel, feeling unpleasantly full. As expected, we all got sick. Our extravagant friend, who had eaten most of what he had ordered, was taken to the hospital. The rest of us were given strict orders to only consume liquids and stay in bed for the rest of our stay. Pepper sauce and truffle. I was flying back home from France. I had been given a first-class seat because the plane was overbooked and my seat had been given to someone else. I did not, of course, mind the change one bit. I had been traveling on a very tight student budget, and had been trying to cut down on expenses, so I tended to skip meals quite often. After the plane took off, I realized that I was famished. Appetizing smells wafting my way from the galley did nothing to reduce my hunger. Fortunately, we were served very soon. I tasted the food and was truly amazed. It consisted of the most succulent, tastiest bonfilé in pepper sauce that I had ever had. It was served with truffles and baked baby potatoes with herbs. The pepper sauce was delicious, as were the truffles. I decided that I rather liked flying first class.
So now that you have listened again to the article, immense. So what do we write here? Immense. Yes, extremely large, enormous, huge, because he said immense meal. Feast. Feast, it's almost the same. A large, elaborate meal. Feast, as I said before, a large meal. Gobble down. He said we kept gobbling down what was ever on the table. To gobble down. Very good. To eat something quickly and clumsily with almost no chewing. To eat something very quickly and looking clumsy with almost no chewing, as if you are extremely hungry, as if you are starving. Exorbitant. Exorbitant here. Much larger amount of money than normal. So astronomical. So he said exorbitant. It means that it was very expensive. Extravagant. Extravagant means spending more than one can afford. Skip a meal. Skip a meal. Maybe from the name itself, not have a meal. To skip a meal, to not have a meal. Waft. What about the word waft here? Yes, move gently through the air. Waft, to move gently through the air. Succulent. He was describing the food. Succulent. Juicy and good. Succulent, juicy and good. Famished. He said I was famished. Yes, extremely hungry and starving. So when you say I'm famished, it means you're very hungry. Appetizing. He said the appetizing smell. Food that looks and smells so good, it makes you want to eat it. So when you describe a food appetizing, that it looks and smells so good, you want to eat it. Be here, write a description of a memorable meal you once had. It might have been special occasion, maybe a special occasion, or just an ordinary meal when something special happened. Maybe something special during the meal happened. That's why it's memorable. Number 2, before you write, use a graphic organizer to help you remember the details of where were you, who were you with, what you ate, when it was, and why it was special. So you have to write now about a memorable meal. Why is it special? But we have a graphic here that will help us organize our ideas. So here in the middle, you write the topic of your memorable meal, and then you fill what, why, who, when, and where. So fill it with your own story, your own information. For example, here I said my friend's farewell party. He was going to travel. So who was eating? Me and my friends, of course. What? what were we eating? Burgers and fries. When? 4 months ago. Why? Because my friend is going on a scholarship to get his PhD. That's why I made the party, the farewell party, where, of course, we were at a burger restaurant. So you can fill up this chart, let's say, this graphic here, and with your own information. Then when you finish all the topic itself, who, when, where, what, and why, after that you can write, because you have the information detailed here. Jumping to the writing corner, when writing an essay about a memorable event, so we hear some pointers. Brainstorm and picture different events, occasions, and scenes. So brainstorm and picture, imagine them. Make notes about the pictures in your mind. So once you try to start to imagine them, make notes. Think about your reader or your audience and select information accordingly. Of course, know your audience. Check to make sure you would not offend anyone through your account. So check because, the words, the food, that you don't offend anyone. Focus on the people, the setting, the events, and feelings as required to highlight the aspect you want to focus on. So the aspect you want to focus on, so know the people, the setting, the events, and the feelings required. And with that, we reach the end of this lesson. See you next lesson, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.